Hello, hello. We are live. And my name is Sandra Jennings, and you are watching Passion Speak. Thank you for tuning in if you're tuning in tonight. Um, one moment. Yes, you are watching Passion Speak, where we give those with a passion a platform to speak. My guest this evening, and as usual, I am excited to bring you yet another guest living their passion. Something about a person doing what they love makes me happy. I can't explain it. I'll never be able to explain it, but I love it. And tonight's guest is going to bring you something you may also like. This lady is the founder of the International Women's Motorsports Association. And she's based right here in Michigan. She's not here at the current time, but her operation is based out of Michigan. We are lucky to have her. And she is going to tell us her story. Her name is Melinda Russell. Melinda,
Hello,
how are
Sandra. So
you?
good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate your time. Um, I have to say, now this is my shameless plug, right? Um, when I first met you, I must have been like 6 months ago. We were at a luncheon, a ladies' luncheon, hosted by Stacy Steele. Have to put that out there. Thank you for the connection, Stacy. Um, and you talked about motorsports. I have an uncle who was big. He's long since passed. He was big in the motorsports. So when you said motorsports, my ears just went straight up. I just perked up. I was like, wow, you're in motorsports. Tell me all about what you do. And ever since that time, I'm just excited about what you do, especially since you cater your association around women. And we know
hmm
that women are very powerful force. Yay, women. I'm a feminist. Let's just say it. So Melinda, please tell us a little bit more about yourself and then we can go from there.
All right, sounds good. Well, I'm a farm girl at heart. I grew up in West Central Illinois on a farm and lived there in Illinois for a lot of years. And then in 1999, my first husband got a job in Michigan, moved to Michigan. My older two kids were out of high school. Excuse me, my younger two were in sixth and eighth grades. So we moved to Michigan, and that was quite an adventure for someone who had never lived anywhere else. And then continue now to live in Michigan. I'm married to my second husband, Mark. We've been married for 13 years, and I live in Kalamazoo, Michigan. And then in the wintertime, we take our RV to Arizona, where my younger two daughters eventually settled. So I have my two younger daughters. They're 34 and 32. They live in Glendale and Phoenix, Arizona, and I have six grandchildren out here. And
Ooh.
then the rest of the year I live in Michigan, where my oldest daughter lives, and her two daughters who both race, her son and granddaughter, and then I have other grandkids in Michigan. So I spend my time back and forth. um,
Okay.
i I started the IWMA back in 2017. Do you want me to go ahead and go there, or do you
You
want to
can
ask me some
talk. I want to
questions?
talk briefly about I do want to mention that you had a business, and this is how then you can pick it up from there, where you send out greeting cards. And if anyone wants to know about how that she has a send out card business, if anybody wants to know, you can find her contact information there in our broadcast. But
Yes.
pick it up from the send out card business.
Okay, so in 2008, I was introduced to Send Out Cards, which is a greeting card and gifting company, and it's a company where you get online, you um, design your card, you can add your pictures to it, and you hit the send button, and the company based in Salt Lake City, Utah, will print, stamp, and mail your card for you for a couple bucks. It's a great company. It's a great way to stay in touch. And so I was working a full-time job, and I was doing send out cards on the side. My company that where I work closed. I ended up having to have some back surgery. And so traveling and visiting businesses and driving and doing all the things that I was normally doing when I wasn't working my regular job, I couldn't really do that much anymore because the back surgery was pretty extensive. It didn't go as well as I had hoped. So I still have a lot of pain in my back. But I wanted to continue to grow my send out card business. I had coffee with a friend of mine who was a coach. He suggested to me that I reach out to the racing industry because I'm a motorsports fan, and he thought that would be a great way to grow send out cards.
Okay.
Well, I was overwhelmed by that thought because to me, the motorsports industry was huge. So I was like, oh, I don't know if that's going to work or not. And then one night when I was laying down to go to sleep, the idea came to me that, well, maybe motorsports is the industry, but maybe I should reach out to women in motorsports. To me, that seemed like a much smaller group where I could perhaps, share send out cards and etc. So the next day, I looked on Google and I looked on Facebook and all these places looking for a group of women in motorsports. I Googled everything you could think of to try to find some kind of group that already existed for women in motorsports, and I could not find what I was looking for. I found a couple different groups that were women involved in motorsports of one kind or another, but I was looking for a group that would connect women from any kind of motorsports, whether it be motorcycle racing, stock car, drag car, airplanes, speedboats, any kind of racing. There wasn't anything. And so my family encouraged me to, start something, do it. I'm not afraid. I've been a business owner for different things in the past. And so they're like, why don't you just start something? So on a Sunday afternoon in August, I put a post on Facebook and said, I have a project involving women in motorsports. If you or someone would like to know more about it, tag yourself here. That was early afternoon on a Sunday. Mm-hmm. By the time I went to bed that night, I had over 100 names, and I was trying to capture all those names on a piece of paper. And then by the end of the next day, I had over 200 names. So I started an Excel spreadsheet, started putting those names in, who I heard from. And then I started reaching out to them through Facebook, just saying, send me your email. How can I get in touch? Would you like to, know more about it? So then I'm thinking, well, I need to be able to promote women somehow if this is what I'm going to do. I have a publishing background. I owned a weekly newspaper for 10 years when I lived in Illinois. So I had the magazine, the writing the story kind of bug and the history of that. So I thought, well, I'm going to do an online magazine and all about women in motorsports. So I started reaching out to these women. Would you like to be in a story in the magazine? I've never had anybody tell me no. Everybody that I've reached out to has responded back and said, yes, I'd love to. I can't do it right now. Or here's my information, but so I started my first issue of the International Women's Motorsports Association news magazine in November of 2017. And we published an issue almost every month. Some months life got in the way and there were things that happened. But most months we've published a magazine. It comes to your email. So anyone that would like to receive a copy of the most recent one, they can get a hold of me through the information you're going to share to the email, and they can get that magazine sent to them. But it was just a natural progression to write stories in the magazine because I love telling the stories. And so then a couple friends of mine had a kind of like a Facebook Live. It wasn't really a podcast, but at that time it was like a show similar to what we're doing tonight, where Facebook Live, people could come in and ask questions or whatever. And they asked me if I would be interested in interviewing a woman on their show. So I said, sure, I'll do that. So I started doing a little interview thing for them on their show, and it was very popular. And my friend said, Melinda, you really should have your own podcast because, this is popular. So I thought about it for a little bit and I thought, well, what the heck, I might as well give it a try. So then I started Racing Girls Rock podcast. And you can find that on pretty much any platform that has podcasts or where you listen to your podcast. So then I started interviewing women for that. And it's just grown. I have about almost 9,000 followers on Facebook, and I really haven't worked at that. That is just Sally telling Karen, and Karen tells Joe, and Joe tells Sandra, and they just naturally start to follow, which has been really, really exciting. So that's what I do. Most of the time, that's what I'm involved in. In 2020, 2019, and 2020, I was working on having events at NASCAR and NHRA tracks, as well as some other smaller tracks. And we know what happened. COVID shut everything down. So NASCAR wasn't allowing really hardly anyone even to come to the races, much less have an event. So those all got canceled. But for 2022, we're already working on some. I've spoken to a couple people at a couple different tracks already for 2022. We're hopefully going to have some events at those tracks, as well as some other places where we're going to encourage women to come to the race, whether they've never been or they're a fan. And we're going to have some kind of an event geared towards those women. It'll have some kind of a panel of women involved in motorsports that they can come and attend. It might be a private event at one track. It might be out on the midway on another track. They're all going to be different. But we're working on that for 2022, because I know that the largest growing demographic in motorsports is women. There are thousands and thousands of women that are involved in motorsports. In fact, I was pleasantly surprised at how many women are involved. I knew that there were a lot of women in motorsports just based on the people that I knew personally. But when I started going to races and tracks that I hadn't been to before, or for instance, I went to Martin, Michigan, which is actually very close to my house. It's a drag strip. And I went there one weekend in 2018 to watch. And the number of little girls and women racing dragsters, I was blown away. I had no idea. So the scope and the enormity of women in motorsports was way more than I was expecting. And I was pleasantly surprised and excited to see so many women not only driving a race car, but I have a good friend who's a tire specialist for a NASCAR team. I've met women who are, the head of the tire manufacturer for a large race series. I've met women who work right directly with Roger Penske from Penske Entertainment. The people that I've met are amazing. Some are people whose names you would know. Most of the people that I do stories on are people you've never heard of. And I had somebody ask me one time, kind of in a snitty little way, well, who's famous that you've interviewed?
Right.
And I said, well, I did a story on Samantha Bush on her Bundle of Joy Fund. I've done a few others. I said, but most of the stories are about women you've never heard of, but they all have a good story. And they all deserve an opportunity to have their story told. And so, kind of shut her up. And that's what I love. All of these women, young girls, little girls, from little girls to older women, they all have a story.
I want to interrupt you because I
Go ahead.
want to show. I'm just so enthralled. I forgot. Oh, wait a minute. I got a couple of questions here. I want to share a little bit about an interview that you have on your YouTube channel, real quick, because I don't know this person, but so here is your YouTube
and how we
channel.
cover everything to make it all work. Welcome to Racing Girls Rock Podcast. Strap in, window nets up, the pedals are down, and when the green flag drops, we go.
Wow.
Hello, everyone. This is Melinda Russell with Racing Girls Rock Podcast. And I am very honored today to have a fellow podcaster with me. I listen to this gal every week. She's been involved in NASCAR motorsports for quite some time, but we're going to kind of hear her story and hear how did she get interested in motorsports and how did she end up becoming a writer.
Okay, I just wanted to give a clip. That is a clip of your
Kelly Crandall.
Kelly Crandall. That's your podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So who is Kelly Crandall? And she's one that I have I don't follow women's motorsports.
Okay.
So who is Kelly Crandall?
Well, Kelly Crandall is another podcaster. She also writes for racer.com. She pretty much covers NASCAR, but once in a while you'll read something that she's written about NHRA or whatever. I happen to find her podcast. I listen to a lot of podcasts, mostly racing related podcasts. And I happened to come across her, and her name was familiar because I had heard of her through motorsports, and, you know, we start to hear about each other. And so I reached out to her and asked her to be on my podcast. She does a podcast called the Racing Writers Podcast. She interviews a lot of people who are well known in the NASCAR, pretty much NASCAR community. She does a great job. She's young. She's passionate, Sandra, about motorsports and sharing stories. And I loved interviewing her. And, you know, the best part about a podcast, I guess, over a magazine story, is that on a podcast, I'm face to face, just like we are today. And we interact and we can talk back and forth and we have a conversation. And when I call them and say, would you be on my podcast? And some are a little leery to do it if they're not done it before. I said, we're just going to have a conversation.
Right.
And I'm not going to ask you anything that you're not going to know the answer to, because this is your story. This is who you are. And so, yeah, Kelly was a great interview. I encourage people to go in and listen to her and then listen, you know, to the Racing Writers Podcast. But there's a number of women that I've interviewed. Cindy Lucchese she works with Penske Entertainment. Great interview. Just such fun learning what these women do behind the scenes.
Wow.
Because we know who Danica Patrick is.
Right.
Everybody knew that. But what about the people behind the scenes that got her signed up with GoDaddy, put GoDaddy on the map? Who does her tires? Who does her PR? All these different things. There's thousands of women involved in motorsports behind the scenes that help all of those teams in whatever way it might be. And I love sharing those stories. You know, young girls tend to want to be the next Tony Stewart or the next, you know, World of Outlaw champion or the next this or that. But we know that motorsports, just like any other professional sports, there's thousands of people in the pool, and it narrows down and narrows down and narrows down to a handful. And not to discourage girls from wanting to do that, but I usually say to them, what's your plan B? What else do you like to do? Do you like to draw? Do you like graphic design? Do you like engineering? Do you like travel? There's so many opportunities in motorsports for women that they've probably never thought of. A lot of them have never thought of. And so that's one of the things that I try to do, is encourage, especially younger women, to, you know, investigate, I guess you would say, what other opportunities there might be in case the driving doesn't work out. You can always drive the race car at your local track.
Let me ask you some questions about back to the actual motorsports themselves. So months ago we had a conversation and I asked you, like, what motorsports, and earlier when you spoke just now, you said all motorsports, whether it's a plane, whether it's a scooter, a motorcycle, a boat, a boat with a motor attached to it. But you like to focus on racing, or is that just the one that's readily available?
No, actually, you know, motorsports is every kind of sport. Yes, I'm a huge NASCAR fan. I love NASCAR. I love ARCA, which is part of the NASCAR series. I'm learning more about the sprint car series. I didn't grow up around it. We didn't have that anywhere close. So that's something I'm learning more about. NHRA, which is the drag race series. I've made friends with several women that race motorcycles, also race cars in that series. So I'm learning too in the last 4 years about other motorsports series, other ways to race. It's not just an oval asphalt track. It might be a road course. It might be a dirt track. It could be out on Lake Havasu here in Arizona. There's so many different types of racing that involve motorsports. So when I say racing, some people might think of bicycles because they race bicycles, or they might race something else. I say anything with a motor. If you race it and it has a motor, that's who I'm interested in.
So they can join your association and become active and network with other motorsports professionals or
Absolutely.
amateurs or hobbyists, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I got to ask this question about the lack of color in motorsports. Do you see that changing? I mean, I know that people of color have always, particularly men, have always been excited about motorsports. But do you see women of color in your industry at all?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So
Really?
the first one that comes to mind is a young gal that worked on a pit crew. And so, yeah, and she came out of college. A lot of college athletes end up on pit crews. When a NASCAR team or a team is looking for a professional person to be on their pit crew, they recruit athletes out of colleges because they have a work ethic. They're usually in really good shape. They know what it means to be a part of a team. It's a perfect fit. So yeah, Brianna Daniels is a young gal that I can think of just right off the top of my head. There's more and more young, not just Black females, but Hispanic. And in the NASCAR series, we have Bubba Wallace who drives. We have Daniel Suarez from Mexico. Michael Jordan is a team owner. Pitbull is a team owner. You're seeing more and more diversity, I think, in motorsports of all kinds. We have people coming over from Europe and Australia and all over the countries coming to the United States to race. They might have been racing in their own country and then they come here. All of that is growing. It's not a white man's sport anymore. That's what it used to be. It's women, it's people of color, it's people from other countries. And the thing about motorsports, not just NASCAR, it's such a welcoming sport. When you become part of motorsports or maybe it's just your local track, maybe it's ARCA, maybe it's the NHRA. When you become part of those series and those teams and you show up every week to race at Kalamazoo Speedway, which is my favorite racetrack, you become part of the family. And you could be very competitive out on the track. And you're probably racing against guys that really are good friends. But once you get on the track, you're competitive. But if you get off the track or a buddy has a flat tire or something goes wrong with their car, sitting in the stands watching the people from all different pit crews coming over to help that person when they pull in. Or if there's a tragedy or something where somebody needs something, there's no better family than the racing family. All the animosity from wrecking each other on the track is put aside, and they're the first ones there to help. And that is something I always say, if racing went away tomorrow and we didn't have any more motorsports at all, the people that I've met and the family that I have through racing is not going away. They're forever. And that's something nobody can take away from me.
That's beautiful. I appreciate that. And I'm sure everyone can appreciate that. So I have a question. If I wanted to, maybe I'm interested in it, but I don't want to, I don't have the resources or the time to do it, to pursue it from a money making standpoint or monetizing at any level. If I want to just volunteer, do they allow just, you know, general public interested parties to just come in and volunteer with teams or
Oh,
in the yard?
absolutely. So let me turn that out. What's interesting about that, I encourage people to find out what does it take to put that car on the track every week. Because people come, we're just going to take Kalamazoo Speedway for an example, because that's my home track. People come to the races. They show up at 7:00. The races start at 7:15 or 7:30. They watch the races and they go home. They don't realize that most of those race teams got there at noon. Maybe they got there at 4:00, whatever it was. They get there hours ahead of time. They prep their car. There's all kinds of things they have to do to get ready for that race. They buy tires. They have to pay for pit passes. Lots of things go on before that car hits the track. I encourage everyone to at least one time, reach out to your favorite driver. Reach out to somebody that you know that has a car and ask them if you can come hang out in the pits with them just for one race. But you got to go when they go. You got to go at noon and hang out with them the whole time and see what it takes to race that car and the cost just to race at Kalamazoo Speedway. If you buy 4 tires, you know, that's, oh my gosh, $800, maybe more, maybe $1,200 for a set of tires. That might last you one night. Hopefully you can get more than one night out of them.
Okay.
You know, it's $30 a piece to get into the pits. I mean, people don't think about it. They take the entertainment for granted. They show up, they watch the entertainment of racing, and they go home. And people need to get involved. And when they might volunteer to just show up at the pits that night, and they might get the bug. And they might say, hey, can I come and help on your pit crew? You know, my granddaughters both race. We don't pay anybody to come and help. My son-in-law pays for them to get in. He might buy them some food during the night. You know, I send Rowdy energy drinks to the crew, to them. You know, we're big promoters of Rowdy energy drink. But, you know, Peter and Bob and the people that help, they don't get paid. They do it because they love it.
So how old are your granddaughters?
My granddaughters are now 18 and 16, and they started racing at the Little Kalamazoo Speedway, which was a quarter midget track right next to what we call the big track. And they've been racing about 7 years each.
Quarter midget.
Quarter midgets are like go-karts, but not really.
Oh, got it. Okay.
People who don't know what quarter midgets are, I'll say it looks like a go-kart, but it's a quarter midget.
Okay. How old do you have to be a quarter midget racer?
I think you have to be 5.
Wow.
Yeah.
So 5 years old, they can go and be a little race car driver.
Yes. And at Little Kalamazoo Speedway, and probably most tracks like theirs, they do try-and rides. So on a Sunday, they'll advertise they're going to do a try-and ride. You can take your child out there, and the people that, you know, whose kids race, they volunteer to help. They bring their cars. They let a little kid put on the racing suit and the helmet and get in the car, and they show them, and they have restrictor plates on them so they can only go so fast and that, but that gives kids a chance to try it.
Right. So because it sounds like if you're going to be good at this, you kind of got to be like a Venus and Serena. You almost got to start at a very young age and just grow into it and make it part of your blood.
You really do. And, the age of the drivers, even in the professional series, are getting younger and younger. So let's take NASCAR. You have to be at least 18 years old to drive the bigger tracks. The 1.5 mile, 2 mile tracks are bigger. You have to be 18 years old. If you're under 18, you can race on the smaller tracks, the 1 mile or the whatever tracks in NASCAR.
Mhm.
So there's some kids that are 16 that are racing. My friend Carson Hosevar from Kalamazoo, from Portage, Michigan, he raced quarter midgets. He was the most winning quarter midget racer, I believe, and still is in that whole series. But he's now 18 years old, and he races in the Camping World Truck Series for NASCAR. He's the youngest driver in the Camping Truck Series. So, yes, he started young. He started loving racing when he was about 4 years old, and started probably in a car when he was about 5 or 6 years old. And he's 18. He's been racing for probably 12 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm still fascinated. I'm learning so much about your industry, and I'm just fascinated about it. And I know you have your grandsons with you. I think your two grandsons with you. They're in Arizona, so you got to wrap it up so you can get them dinner and get them going. But I appreciate your time, Melinda. My guest, for those of you who are watching, has been Melinda Russell of the International Women's Motorsports Association, and all of her contact information is there in the header. And you're watching Passion Speak, where we give those with a passion a platform to speak. And thank you for watching. But if anyone is interested, Melinda, you went away, and I didn't want you to go away, but I know if anyone is interested, please get in contact with Melinda. I'm gonna have to reach out to her again because I'm not done with what happened. Melinda, you there?
I'm here.
Don't go away. I didn't want you to go away because I want people to be able to contact you. And yeah, your camera. I know that you got to get to your grandsons, but
okay.
I appreciate your time. I really do. So as we head out, what would you say to anybody getting more interested? Just come out to the racetracks.
Yeah. Yeah. Go to the racetrack. Talk to somebody in the ticket booth if you don't know anybody there. Find out who the owner of the track is. Reach out to them and say, hey, I'm really interested in this, or my child's interested. How do I get started? Who do you know? And they'll lead you in the right direction, I promise.
Oh, beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you. And I'm going to see you on the other side because I've got
okay.
some more questions, and I'm going to follow your YouTube.
Sounds good.
Family who have stock car. Yes. You there?
Yeah.
Okay. But again, now we have one comment toward the end. Thank you. Oh, Teresa Lamar. She's a friend. Hi, Teresa. Thank you for watching. She says thank you. That I appreciate you for watching, Teresa. So thanks again, Melinda. And
you're welcome.
All the best for your upcoming season. And I will be in touch, dear.
Sounds like a plan. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.